topics. And because this is going to go on YouTube, there are certain words I cannot say. So just to warn you, I will write down these words, but I will not say them, because if I do say them, then I will get censored on YouTube. Today, we're going to look at how evil triumphs. Why is the world so evil? And there's going to be a lot of extremely disturbing topics we're going to discuss. But you're mature, and it's important that we discuss these topics in order to understand how the world works. So let's just start. And we will do a lot of speculation and theorizing in this class. So do not take this as gospel. Do not believe this is the truth. The entire point of this class is to help you develop the theories and the ideas to better understand the world. These are tools. Okay, this is not truth. These are tools. All right. So the first question I have for you is, what is happening in Israel? Right now, as you know, Israel is besieging, bombarding Gaza. You might have seen the videos on social media. It is disturbing. It is terrible what is happening. The word that is happening, the word that we use for what is happening in Gaza is this word. You are not allowed to say this word on YouTube, but that is the intention. What I will argue, though, is that the truth is far more disturbing than this. What is really happening in Gaza is a ritual sacrifice. And this happens quite often in human history. If you go back and you look at the real history of humanity, this happens quite often. Some of the most famous examples are the Aztecs. We've dug up temples of the Aztecs, and inside the temples are thousands and thousands of human skulls. So before they went to war, they practiced human sacrifice. They would commit mass murder of their enemies in public. So the Aztecs were really famous for this. The Phoenicians, specifically the Carthaginians. We will discuss them later this semester, but the Phoenicians were also famous for a particular type of sacrifice, which is child sacrifice. The Romans wrote histories insulting the Phoenicians for practicing this sort of sacrifice. But the Romans themselves practiced human sacrifice. What they would do is that after every major war, they would capture all the major leaders, all their enemies, and they would parade their enemies through the streets of Rome. This is something called the triumph. At the end of the triumph, they would gather enemies at the temple of Jupiter. Jupiter is their god. And then they would strangle to death their enemies. That's sacrifice. That's human sacrifice. They didn't call it that, okay? And they sort of disguised it, but we know for a fact that they did do this. So the question for us is, why is it that this happens? Why do the Aztecs do it? Why do the Phoenicians do it? Why do the Romans do it? And why is it today the Israelis do it in Gaza? And remember, okay, what the Israelis are doing is quite horrific because it is really this sort of sacrifice. Why? Because 47%, almost half of the population of Gaza is under 18 years old. So the majority of people who are getting killed are in fact children. What is most striking or blatant about what's happening in Gaza is that we can all see it for ourselves. And it's almost as though the Israelis want us to see it and want us to hate them. Right? You can see all over the world, popular opinion is turning against Israel. You have these popular protests all around the world protesting what is happening in Palestine. if they really want to do this, right, there are actually much more effective ways of doing this. For example, you could just poison their water. Or you could poison the air so that everyone in Gaza gets a fast cancer, right? We have the technology to do this. So Israel could do it this secretly and no one would talk about it. And in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, the population of Gaza would all be gone. It would be a very secret, right? Instead, they choose to do this in front of the world. And my argument to you is that this is intentional. They want the world to hate them. Because by doing this, they create the ultimate taboo, right? We find this disgusting and contemptuous, so the entire world will unite against Israel. But guess what? That's what their religion wants. In the extreme form of Jewish eschatology, or their religion, they believe that at the end of the world, Israel will fight the entire world and God will help Israel triumph in the end. So what's really happening in Gaza is that there are extremists within the Israel government who want to accelerate the process of the end of the world where Israel will face the world. And if you think about it, the entire idea of this ritual sacrifice is to unite the Israeli population. And what's extremely disturbing and horrifying about it is that this works. Why? Well, let's use an analogy, okay? The analogy is this. In Chinese history, the most popular military stratagem is to fight with a river behind your back. You guys have heard of this strategy, right? Where, okay, an army is losing, okay? It's being scattered by the enemy. So what the general does is forces the army to retreat to a river. And now with the river blocking your escape, you have a choice. You can either drown in the river or you can fight to the death. And most soldiers will choose to fight to the death. And so at this point, the soldiers are unified, they're galvanized, they're energized, and then they find a surge of energy to go and destroy their enemy. Okay, this is the most popular military stratagem in ancient Chinese history, and guess what? It's the same as Israel doing this right now in Gaza. It's the same logic. Yes, you have a question?
So what is the river for the Israel?
Yeah, that's a good question. What's the river right here, right? The river is a taboo, right? What's the worst thing you can do in modern society? Killing children, guys, right? So there's no exit for Israel. You either go all the way or the world comes and destroys you anyway. And in fact, what's really interesting is that if you go online, you will see Israelis go around the world and causing trouble everywhere. They're going to start fights. They shout death to the Arabs on public buses in the Western world. It's intentional. They want to unite themselves by dividing the world, by angering the world. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. So this is all very disturbing, and I want to slowly unpack, reveal to you how this works. Okay?